Okay, we are back. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Dischiavo. We'll be going over pregnancy and development. Then the last couple times that we talked about male and female reproductive, which makes sense. We've got to lay that framework before we could talk about pregnancy and the development of pregnancy. When we're talking about pregnancy, we're going to be starting at conception. We'll go all the way to birth, okay, or labor. When we start to talk about pregnancy, we've got to understand some basic concepts. First of all, hormones are going to be very important in maintaining the pregnancy and initiating labor. We're going to go through several different types of hormones, and also the development of the zygote, which is going to be the yoked together nuclei of the egg and the sperm, and how that zygote starts from a single cell with 46 chromosomes, turns into a full baby with trillions of cells that have different functions. Okay, so we're going to be moving those processes today. Pregnancy and the delivery of a baby is one of the most amazing things that anyone could ever experience. Even after studying it for years and years, it still amazed me when I was pregnant with both of my sons. Looking at their development, their weekly development, how quickly they became a little person was amazing to me. How quickly their heart started to beat and their nerves started to feel. How quickly they developed hands and feet. Their eye placement starts a little weird, starts on the side, moves to the front, but how quickly their eyes developed. It's just amazing that we can make a human from a single cell. Okay, well, two cells, right, that form one complete 46 chromosome cell, diploid cell. Some definition, pregnancy, of course, is when a woman has conceived, and that is a conceptus, that cell. When those sperm and eggs join together, it's called a conceptus. Really, most commonly, it's called a zygote. Zygote means to yoke together. That's, I believe, on the next screen. The gestation period is going to include, we're just going to include embryo and fetal, okay? Embryo is going to be from week 0, per se, to week 8. The fetal period will be from week 9 until birth. Okay, so I'm not going to do pre-embryo. I'm just going to do embryo and fetal. Conception. So we've pretty much gone through these steps when we went through reproduction. Reproduction, we reviewed how an oocyte goes from being primordial to primary to secondary. That secondary, when it fully develops, is called a graphian or vesicular. It's still a secondary oocyte, but when it's fully developed, it's better known as a graphian or vesicular follicle. It ovulates that egg. That egg goes into the uterine tube or the fallopian tube. Okay. Now, when the egg gets to the ampulla looks like the little, let me move over, the little elbow portion of the fallopian tube, that little curved portion. That will be the area that an egg, if it's going to form a zygote with a sperm, that's where it will happen. The egg or the oocyte is in that ampulla for 12 to 24 hours. So if a sperm comes along within those 12 to 24 hours, they can join together to form a zygote or a fertilized egg. Okay, so there's a short, about 24-hour window that we can have that happen. Sperm, once it is ejaculated, is viable for 24 to 48 hours. So the viability of the sperm and the viability of the egg have to overlap for conception to happen. Okay. Millions of sperm are ejaculated when a man has an orgasm, but not a million make it to the egg. Okay. We've got sperm that have different jobs, per se. There are sperm that will actually line the linings of the female reproductive tract to protect sperm that then pass through the center. And those sperm that pass through the center are going to be the ones that will go towards the egg. They go up, obviously, through the vagina, through the cervix, through the uterus, through the uterine tubes, in search of the egg. Okay? When you get sperm that are reaching the egg, so many other sperms have sacrificed themselves. You actually only have a couple of hundred sperm left, which is fascinating. Even those sperm, as they reach the egg, not all of them are going to get into the egg, obviously. Hundreds also sort of sacrifice themselves to eat away at the shell. There's a shell or a membrane on the outside of the egg. So if this is the egg, if you can imagine that I've got, a layer, a membranous layer on the outside of that. That membranous layer is called the zona pellucida. Okay. And on the outside of that are those granular cells. Let me draw a quick picture of it. Okay. If we come in here, we've got the egg, we've got that membranous layer, and then we have granular cells. And these granular cells are these simple cuboidal cells that go all the way around. So as the sperm are ejaculated, the few hundred that actually make it through have to get through this barrier, okay? Have to get through those granular cells, or those cuboidal shaped cells, have to get through the zona pellucida. So hundreds of these sperm will attach their acrosomal heads that we spoke about last time onto these, or weasel their way through these cells and onto the zona pellucida and start dumping those enzymes into the zona pellucida. Those enzymes will start to eat away at the zona pellucida, and finally it is thin enough that one lucky little fella gets in. Okay? So when he gets in, he'll start the process of opening up the head of the sperm, losing the tail. The female, what's called pronucleus, has 23 chromosomes. The head of the sperm has 23 chromosomes. They'll lose their membranes. Those 23 chromosomes from each part will join together, and they'll form the 46 complement of chromosomes to form that diploid cell that is now known as a zygote. Okay, so that's sort of what happens there. That wearing away of the acrosomal head, if you look at your notes really quick, is called capacitation of the sperm. Okay, it's taking away that acrosomal head, allowing those enzymes to come out to eat away at the zona pellucida. Okay. Oh, and the zona pellucida is this membrane. And the corona radiata, somebody thought it looked like a radiating crown around the egg. The corona radiata the radiating crown of cells that are around the oocyte or the egg that the sperm have to get through. Okay. Now, don't forget, the oocyte or the egg has to be in the ampulla to be fertilized. Okay. If it happens too much further down the uterine tubes, as the egg develops into its more developed form, we'll talk about the names in just a minute, it'll implant too low in the uterus and it won't be a viable fetus or embryo. Okay. So it has to happen in the ampulla. Moving down to the next slide. So once the next slide is polyspermy, we're going to talk about that. Poly, of course, means many. Spermy means sperm. We do not want polyspermy. So if you think for a minute, why will we not want it? Well, if we let one sperm in, that has 23 chromosomes, and we have the pronucleus of the female oocyte that has 23 chromosomes. Well, together they're going to have 46 chromosomes, so 23 pairs. That's how many we need to be a human being. If you let in another sperm, well, now we're going to have an additional 23 chromosomes. It's not compatible with life. Okay, you have too many chromosomes. So polyspermy is something that we want to prevent. Now, I think the notes that I've put together for you, I'm sorry, are a little confusing. Let me simplify it. When the sperm comes in to the egg, that will be the male pronucleus that will join with the female pronucleus and form the zygote, the 46 chromosomes. What happens as soon as that gets in is calcium is released from the inside of the egg or the oocyte. That calcium immediately shuts off any receptors in the zona pellucida that will receive the sperm and give them a site to attach to. Okay, so it shuts those receptors down, and the egg will actually swell a little bit and push any sperm off that may be attached already. So what that does is, don't worry about the slow and the fast block to polyspermy. Worry that these two events will prevent any polyspermy whatsoever. Okay. So going through the next slide, let me zero in really quickly on the slide itself. This is right in your book. What we're looking at is the corona radiata. If we're looking at the top, once again, if you can't see this on the overheads, and I'm going to start posting these online. If you can't see them, either pull up my PowerPoints online or open up your book. You can see that corona radiata is all of those cells surrounding the egg. The zona pellucida is that membrane. Okay, you can see how all the sperm are attached at the upper portion of the picture. Once one of the sperm gets in, you can see that it loses its tail. The male and the female pronucleus grow closer together. Once they join together, I'm in the middle of the fourth circle down, they form a zygote. Okay, that's when you get a diploid cell. You have 46 chromosomes that join together. Now, immediately, that cell starts to divide. And you could see at the bottom, you start to get two daughter cells. And it keeps dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing until you have multiple cells jam-packed together in that circular area, okay? And you could see on this, we talked about zygote. Zygote is that initial stage of the egg joining with the sperm, forming the first cell of that baby. That's the first cell of the baby. It starts to divide, and if you look the next two pictures over, B and C, there's 4-cell stage, and then there's what's called a morula. And morula actually means little berry, because somebody thought this actually looked like a raspberry. There's multiple cells, still in about the same size shape though. And what that does is it increases surface area. So the little embryo can start to get as much nutrition as possible. And they'll get nutrition from the lining of the mother's uterus or any of the fluids that are bathing it within the uterine tubes or the uterus at the time, okay? Now, the next step over is the blastocyst. So the difference between the morula and the blastocyst is the morula is solid cells. The blastocyst has a space in it, okay? Now, the reason that the blastocyst starts to form that space is it starts to divide into two major portions of the embryo. Now, you can see the inner cell mass, which is the fourth circle from the left, and then around it, fifth circle from the left. Around it is what's called the trophoblast. Now, what the trophoblast contributes to is going to be embryonic membranes. So the amnion, actually part of the placenta, that contributes to that. The inner cell mass is going to turn into the embryo. So those little clumps of cells will start to divide, and at some magical moment, the genes will be turned on in those cells to become every single different type of cell in your body. Okay, so trophoblast and embryonic disc. So implantation, so that blastocyst goes down and it will implant into the endometrium. That happens about 6 to 7 days after ovulation, obviously. Now, we've got to remember a couple of things. Excuse me. Got to remember a couple of things, hormonally speaking. So if a woman goes through her complete menses, progesterone and estrogen rise and then drop off and she menstruates. Well, what that is doing is it's preparing a woman's body to be pregnant, basically. Estrogen's rising, progesterone's rising. Progesterone progestation is preparing the body for implantation of the embryo, okay? So what happens is that little blastocyst that's implanting on the inside of the endometrium, the inside of the uterus, the inner lining of the uterus, will start to release a hormone called human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG. And this HCG will actually peak up until, I believe, about 12 weeks, okay? What its job is, this HCG, is to stimulate in the ovaries that area that is left over after the egg has been ovulated, called the corpus luteum. Okay, if you don't remember it, go look it up, because we did talk about it. The corpus luteum is going to be the scar tissue, the swollen area from which the oocyte, the secondary oocyte, is ovulated. Okay? If a woman gets pregnant, human chorionic gonadotropin from this little bitty blastocyst cell that we just talked about, little bitty blastocyst cell, will release that human chorionic gonadotropin, and it'll stimulate the corpus luteum to release pro-gestation progesterone. That progesterone will keep the body in that state of pregnancy. Okay? Some women have trouble keeping progesterone levels high during this period of pregnancy. And that's why they get the injections of the progesterone to help keep the baby safe. Okay? Now, at about 12 to 16 weeks, somewhere in there, what will happen, I want you to think about this thought for just a second. And let me move this back to this screen. There we go. Okay, so we're looking at, whoa, where'd you go? Okay, so we're looking at this screen right now. So at about 12 to 16 weeks, human chorionic gonadotropin drops off. Because the placenta is big and strong enough at that point, it starts to release progesterone, because the placenta is a huge releaser of hormones. It's going to release progesterone and estrogen, okay? Progesterone is going to be, once again, intact the whole way through the pregnancy to keep the pregnancy viable. And at 12 to 16 weeks, that releasing progesterone will be taken over by the placenta. And what I want you to think about is what usually happens during the first trimester in a female. Does she feel great and terrific and want to go out and run a marathon? Probably not. She's probably bent over a bucket somewhere throwing up because she feels so nauseous. That nausea is caused by HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin, which drops off about week 12 to 14, which is exactly when women start to feel a little bit better. Okay? So human chorionic gonadotropin is sort of like luteinizing hormone that will help to perpetuate that release of progesterone till the 2nd to 4th month. Now, that little blastocyst will adhere to the endometrial lining by what's called trophoblast cellular adherence. It's simply a substance on the surface which will help to hold it onto the wall of the endometrium. Implantation. Now, one final thing on implantation. So as a blastocyst comes down, it'll implant halfway or above in the uterus. Okay, it won't implant towards the bottom. Excuse me. So placenta and blood supply. We've got to remember that we can't really intermingle, or we don't really intermingle a mother's blood supply with a child's blood supply. We keep them separate. Okay, we keep them separate. So that way the mother won't develop antibodies against the infant. Okay. Keeping it very, very simple, the placenta has two major parts. There's the decidua basalis and the chorion, or the chorionic villi. The decidua basalis is going to be the maternal portion of the placenta. I'll show you this on the next picture. Okay, so next to decidua basalis, please put that is the maternal portion. The chorion is going to be the embryonic portion. Okay, so decidua is maternal, basalis is maternal, chorion is going to be embryonic. And looking at this next picture, okay, once again, if you can't see this, and I'm going to zoom in on it, if you can't see this, please get your book out. The picture below shows the decidua basalis with the maternal blood and the chorionic villus, or the chorion. So definitely get a closer look at that, because you could see how they get really close to each other. They can exchange gases, but they don't let red blood cells across. Okay, so you can't develop antibodies. The mother can't develop antibodies against that infant. Now, embryonic membranes, So the three different embryonic membranes that we're going to talk about are the amnion. And the amnion is going to hold the amniotic fluid. And once again, take a close look at that picture. The amniotic fluid is going to help to cushion the baby. Okay, babies will also drink the amniotic fluid. One of the theories is that if a mother eats a lot of different types of foods while she's pregnant, the baby can actually taste it through the amniotic fluid. So I know some women have said, well, when I was pregnant, all I craved was pears, and my baby loves pears. Well, one of the theories behind that is that the baby could taste the pears in the amniotic fluid. They get used to it. Okay. The yolk sac, we do have a yolk sac, just like we have a yolk in eggs. Very, very, very early embryological development. It is used a little bit for nutrition, but it more importantly ends up being part of the gut, blood cells, blood vessels, gonadal seeds. Okay. The allantois actually will become part of the urinary bladder, but it forms the basis for the umbilical cord. Now, don't forget, the baby can't breathe or feed itself. It needs to breathe and feed through the mother. Okay. And the way it does that is through that umbilical cord where they have umbilical veins and arteries. Now, the confusing thing about that is don't forget that a vein is a vessel that moves towards the heart. An artery is a vessel that moves away. So when we look at the fetal circulation, the umbilical vein will bring oxygenated, nutrient-rich blood from the mother through the baby's belly button to its heart to be pumped out to its body. The umbilical vein, or I'm sorry, umbilical artery will carry deoxygenated blood that has had the nutrients taken out of it back to the mother to get new oxygen and nutrients to feed and oxygenate the baby. Okay. Gastrulation or germ layer formation. Okay. So gastrulation or germ layer formation. Let me zoom in here. So gastrulation, as that zygote divides and becomes the morula and then becomes a blastocyst, that inner cell mass that we just talked about, that little clump of cells that are undifferentiated will start to differentiate. And differentiate means exactly that. It starts to turn into cells that will start to eventually have specific jobs, like eyeball cells, liver cells, heart cells, muscle cells, etc. But it doesn't just happen. We don't take this little clump of cells and then wham bam, I'll turn them into a baby immediately. It goes through different ways that it develops. The first next step after being a clump of cells is gastrulation, okay, or germ layer formation. What happens with gastrulation, I'm hoping you remember this because I try to emphasize this, is it turns into 3 layers of cells. There's the endoderm, the mesoderm, and the ectoderm. Okay. These layers will start to do this kind of thing, actually sort of like that, okay, and start to form in the back, the spinal cord, and in the front, the tube for the GI and the respiratory system. So it starts to sort of what's called invaginate or fold in, and it forms these tubes for the central nervous system, and then in the front, it's going to be the GI and the respiratory system. So I try to make this a little easy because this is just brutal memorization when you start to get into embryonic layers and what goes where, okay? The ectoderm is going to, in general, form the epidermis. Here, let me do that a little bit neater. Okay, so ectoderm, epidermis, and nervous system. Okay. Epidermis, so the ectoderm is going to form the epidermis and the nervous system. The endoderm is going to form the linings for gastrointestinal tract and respiratory tract. Okay. It's going to form the linings for the GI and the respiratory tract. Okay. Mesoderm is going to be everything else. It's going to be muscles, it's going to be the dermis of the skin, it's going to be the bulk of organs for the body. So just kind of giving you a generalized term, okay, for those 3 layers. So if you think about it, the ectoderm, so this would be these 3 layers as it starts to invaginate or form those rolled inner parts, is going to have the epidermis, which is the surface of the skin, but it also folds in, and it folds deep in to form the nervous system. And eventually this infolding will close off. In this portion, which is going to be the lining of the GI and the respiratory, starts to fold in, and it forms the tubes of the respiratory and the GI. That middle layer is like kind of the catch-all. If you have to guess mesoderm, because it has everything else, okay? So gastrulation. Then, as these layers start to develop, they start to fold, and they fold towards the front, towards the back, form the head and the rump. They then lead to genesis, creation of, organogenesis, or the creation of organs. Okay, so, excuse me, this is the first step leading to the end product being organogenesis. Okay, ectodermal development, we've kind of zipped through this. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, ectodermal development, neurulation is going to be the creation of the neural tube, which will lead to the brain and the spinal cord. And you can see I put that picture in so you can see how that invaginates and forms that tube. Endodermal layer, you can see how that folds over, especially the top right, and it forms the future digestive tube or gut. Mesodermal layer, you can see it has everything else, right? All those lists of structures. One of the kind of interesting things, the notochord is going to be remnants that are left over in the nucleus pulposus, which is the gel in the center of the discs of the spine. Okay, so this is a remnant from the mesodermal layer. Interestingly enough, because it disappears and gets encased in that hard outer portion of a disc, the body does not recognize the nucleus pulposus as its own tissue, because the immune system is developed after the nucleus pulposus is encased. That's why when people herniate a disc, they get such inflamed pain, because the body doesn't recognize it and it has a huge inflammatory response. Okay, intermediate and lateral mesoderm, you can see, all those structures it forms. Okay, somites are going to be a little bit more specific. Somites are going to include scleroderm, dermatome, and myotomes. Okay, sclerotomes are going to, I think I misprinted down a step first, sorry, are going to form part of the skull, part of the ribs, and the vertebra. Okay, so sclerotome are going to end up being ribs, skull, and vertebra. Dermatome is going to be the dermal layer of the skin, and myotome is going to be muscles. Okay, so that's going to form bones, the dermatomes, which will give a sensation to the skin, and muscles. Okay, these somites. And somites are structures that start to form next to that neural tube, okay, and develop. Excuse me. Fetal circulation. Okay, I'd like to talk to you about this for a couple minutes. Fetal circulation. Just a brief refresher. Okay, just a brief refresher as to adult circulation through the heart. Okay, if you don't remember this, you really, really need to review it. As clinicians, this is going to be uber important for you to understand this stuff. Okay, so if you don't remember this, I would absolutely review it. Okay, so we've got the right atrium, the right ventricle, the left atrium, the left ventricle. Okay, the right side of the heart, right atrium, yeah, okay. The right side of the heart will have deoxygenated blood. It'll be brought back to the heart by the inferior and superior vena cava. Okay, so the right atrium is going to have the inferior vena cava bringing blood back, and the superior vena cava bringing blood back. Blood goes down to the right ventricle, out to the lungs, gets oxygen, comes back to the heart, to the left atrium. Okay, so we've got pulmonary veins bringing blood, oxygenated blood, back to the left atrium, goes down to the left ventricle, then the left ventricle sends blood out to the body by the aorta, okay? Now, this is a chart, okay? This is a chart. This is not how the vessels actually leave or enter the heart. It's very important to understand that, okay? So remember, this is just a chart to help you memorize this stuff. Looks very different when you look at the actual heart, okay? Now think, in the fetus, it doesn't have to send blood to the lungs, right? It doesn't have to send blood to the lungs because it's getting oxygenated blood from the mother, okay? So what happens in the fetus is oxygenated blood comes through the umbilical cord, comes in by the umbilical vein. The umbilical vein comes up, bypasses the liver by what's called the ductus venosus. I'm going to draw this all in just a minute, okay? So just listen. Goes into the right side of the heart. Doesn't have to go to the lungs. So we have two bypasses that will send that oxygenated blood to the right side of the heart or to the aorta to be pumped out to the body, okay? So in a fetus, the umbilical vein brings oxygenated blood to the fetal heart, to the right side. That right side has shunts that will bypass the lungs that send it to the left side to pump it out to the body. Okay, these are the shunts. So this is how it goes. So now we're talking about the fetal heart. So the fetal heart will, through the umbilical vein, I don't know if you can see that. Hold on a second. Okay, so we have the umbilical vein is going to have a little bypass called the ductus venosus. It'll actually bypass the liver. Ductus venosus. This is right in your notes if you can't see it. That ductus venosus leads to the inferior vena cava, which goes to the right atrium. This is where it gets really important. This is, I mean, all of it's important. This is what I really want you to know, okay? In the fetal heart, we have a hole, right? Can't do this looking at the monitor. There, okay? We have a hole in the heart. This is the hole in the heart that you may have heard of, that some people are born with. That hole in the heart is normal in a fetus. What happens is blood comes into the right atrium and is shuffled right through to the left atrium so it could go right out to the body. Doesn't need to go to the lungs. Okay? That hole is called foramen ovale. F-O-R-A-M-E-N. This is right in your notes. Ovale. O-V-A-L-E. Foramen ovale. Okay? So it goes from the right atrium to the left atrium. Now, then it goes from left atrium to left ventricle out the aorta. Done. Now, okay, some of the blood will go down to the right ventricle, right here. If it gets into the right ventricle, some of it may go to the lungs, and that's okay because the lungs are growing, they need blood, it sends some blood to them to help grow the inner linings of the lungs. But some of it will start to go out the pulmonary trunk. Once again, we're reviewing the adult heart. The pulmonary trunk will go out to the lungs to get oxygenated blood. We don't need it to go there. So between the pulmonary trunk, and if you don't remember this, please get out a book and look at it. The pulmonary trunk, if you look at anatomy, will pass right next to, right in front of the aorta. Perfect placement, isn't it? Because we have a shunt that goes from the pulmonary trunk, it's just a small blood vessel, from the pulmonary trunk to the aorta, called the ductus arteriosus. Once again, that's right in your notes, okay? Ductus arteriosus. It's in the right column of the notes you're looking at right now. Okay, ductus arteriosus. So blood will be shunted from the pulmonary trunk through the ductus arteriosus to the aorta. Perfect. Can be pumped right out to the body, okay? So two fetal shunts that are really important because I know this is a lot of verbiage here. There's foramen ovale and there's ductus arteriosus. Foramen ovale is the hole in the heart. It's between the right atrium and the left atrium. Ductus arteriosus is the artery that's going to be between the pulmonary trunk and the aorta, okay? So, do we need that open when a baby's born? Absolutely not. So a baby is born, they take their first breath, their lungs are cleared out, they take their first breath. It increases the pressure in the thoracic cavity. That increased pressure actually will close these two shunts down. And they will turn into, we're going to go into this in a little bit, form an ovale, turns into fossa ovalis. This is right in your notes. Hold on a second, let me just double check. It is, okay, so this is in your notes. So I'm not writing it because we're going to go over it in a couple minutes. There we go. Okay, so foramen ovale, the hole in the heart is going to turn into fossa ovalis. Foramen is an opening, fossa is like an indentation. Okay, and it's like a membrane. And with that first breath, that membrane just shuts and it closes that opening between the right and left atrium. First breath is taken, that ductus arteriosus, due to that intrathoracic pressure, also close and turns into ligamentum arteriosum. Big words, I know, it's right in your notes. Okay, we'll go over it in just a minute. So, okay, two fetal shunts. The reason it's important to know them is primarily or only in the foramen ovale that stay open. So if that stays open, think about it. We're going to have deoxygenated blood from the right side of the heart when a baby is born, moving to the left side. If that hole is big enough and there's enough deoxygenated blood moving over, you could get what's called a blue baby. It's a baby that's not getting enough oxygenation, and that has to be fixed. If it's only open a little bit, people could live with it for years and years and years. Okay. The next picture, I'm going to zoom in on the screen for the next couple of slides, okay, is the fetal circulation. Holy crow, right? That is a chunk of change. I really want you to focus on all the structures that we went over. This is an important thing for you guys to know, okay? Pregnancy effects on mom, uterine expansion. Wow, that's a no-brainer, isn't it? The uterus actually will expand all the way up to the xiphoid process. I hate to keep going in and out, but just in case you don't remember, this is your xiphoid. The uterus goes from the bony pelvis all the way up here, takes all those abdominal organs and pushes them aside. They get all smushed. It's amazing. That's why women have such horrible reflux when they're pregnant, because it's pushed the stomach up. I mean, there's nowhere to put food. A poor pregnant woman, they're starving because their body's taking all, their baby's taking all their food, and they can't fit any food in their little stomachs. So, uterine expansion. Lordosis is going to be that increased curve in the low back, which makes sense. All that weight's going to be in the abdominal region. All that weight's going to be in the abdominal region. So, I was going the wrong way. So, it pulls the low back, and they get that arch in the back. Relaxant is also going to be another placental hormone that's released, does exactly what it says. Relaxant will relax the pelvic joints. So when that baby comes, they can actually expand a little bit and give the baby a little bit of room, okay, to get out. Weight gain, once again, no-brainer, right? And there's variabilities of weight gain. Theoretically, it should be somewhere around 25, 30 pounds. Different for everybody, okay? Folic acid. I know that we talked about this in neurology. Let me just there are a few things. I want you to remember everything from this class. There are a couple of very important things I want you to remember. Folic acid is a B vitamin that's so important if a woman is pregnant or even thinking about being pregnant. It prevents spina bifida. If you don't remember what spina bifida is, please review your notes from last semester. It's a biggie. Spina bifida is when the back portion of the vertebral column doesn't close. It can be open just a little, or it can be open a lot, to the point where the spinal cord comes out, okay? So the back portion of the back portion of the vertebra is not closed, and the spinal cord can actually come out in extreme cases. So folic acid is an easy way to prevent that. Now, EPA, let's talk about that. EPA, DHA in general are known as omega-3s. Okay, omega-3 are essential fatty acids, and what that means, essential, is that we cannot get EPA or DHA made in our body from other constituents or substances. Omega-3 is a fat, omega-3 fatty acid, that we need to eat in our diets. It's a great fat. It's one of the healthy fats that you hear about. It helps to prevent inflammation and it decreases clotting. In addition to that, what they're finding is it really helps neurological development. Don't forget, the outer portion of nerves is fat. These help that to develop, and it helps to promote concentration in infants. Okay, we talked about nausea. The most likely culprit for nausea is HCG, that human chorionic gonadotropin that we spoke about. Okay, nausea for women quite often will decrease in the second and third trimesters. In some cases, women are nauseous. I was nauseous with my second for pretty much the whole time, but it prevented me from gaining too much weight, which I guess is good. I was at a healthy weight though, I promise. So stress incontinence. Now think back to that mid-sagittal view of a female. Think about the placement of the uterus sitting on top of the bladder. Now think about that uterus growing and growing and growing and growing and smushing that bladder. Makes sense. Stress incontinence is a no-brainer, right? It's going to push down on that bladder to the point where it's difficult for a woman to hold her urine. Okay, so stress incontinence doesn't mean I am stressed, although that can happen as well. Stress incontinence means there's stress on the bladder, which makes it difficult to hold the urine. Now, varicose veins. Once again, think about the uterus. It's taking up the whole abdominal cavity. It'll literally press on the inferior vena cava. The inferior vena cava is going to be the major venous return from the lower extremities. It is the venous return from the lower extremities. So if that is being pushed on, it's harder for the veins in the lower extremities to push blood into the inferior vena cava back to the heart. If that blood is having difficulty returning, it'll pull back into the veins, P-O-O-L, pull back, not pull. It'll pull back into the veins and it will expand them, creating varicose veins. Okay, so for a woman, not gaining too much weight is a great idea. Taking vitamins such as C and E and I think selenium can also help. Will help to strengthen the architecture of those veins, and also those really sexy support hose, the anti-thrombotic hose. Really kind of weird looking, but they help to compress the legs, so they're helping to push the blood back into the inferior vena cava. Okay, so varicose veins. So parturition or labor, what happens as a woman reaches the point where a baby is ready to be delivered, estrogens will rise. And as that rising of estrogens will start to trigger this positive feedback cycle where oxytocin is started to be released from both the mother and the infant. Oxytocin will cause contractions of the uterine muscle. It'll also cause the release of prostaglandins, which also perpetuate the contractions of the uterine smooth muscle. Okay, so we've got estrogen peaking, the release of oxytocin from both the fetus and the mother. Okay, causing those contractions to begin. Dilation and expulsion. So in addition to the uterus starting to contract, the cervix needs to dilate up to 10 centimeters, okay, and efface or thin out. So if you think about it, as the baby pushes down, it's going to start to move the cervix out and thin it. Okay? The water breaks. Now, don't forget the amniotic sac is going to be that sac that's full of amniotic fluid around the baby. This is what is breaking when a woman's water breaks. Okay? Placental stage is the delivery of the placenta or the afterbirth. Okay? What they have to do once the placenta is delivered or expulsed is they need to check it to make sure that it's intact. If there are any ripped portions left inside the mother, she could continue to bleed. It'll be an aggravating structure attached to the inner lining of her uterus or the endometrium. Okay, so they will actually check the afterbirth after it's been delivered. Okay, APGAR score is going to check the health of the baby. You can read this sort of on your own. It gives you the different, and I can actually, let me see. Well, you could probably see it in your notes. You know, heart rate, respiration, 0 to 2 points for each. Okay, 8 to 10 overall is normal. for a baby. Their first breath will also occlude those fetal shunts, as well as clear out the lungs, and surfactant will start to work appropriately. Surfactant is going to be that substance, that detergent-like substance, which will help to keep the lungs open. Okay, occlusion of the fetal shunts. So umbilical artery will turn into superior vesicular artery. You don't really need to know that. Umbilical vein will turn into the round ligament of the liver. And that actually connects, the umbilical vein will connect from the umbilicus or the belly button up to the underside of the liver. It's also known as the ligamentum teres. So I do want you to know that one. Ductus venosus, that should be an S, not an M, is going to be this small little shunt that bypasses the liver from the umbilical vein to the inferior vena cava, turns into ligamentum venosum. Okay, that ductus arteriosus that we talked about turns into a ligament called the ligamentum arteriosum. And the foramen ovale, or the hole in the heart, will turn into the fossa ovalis, which is a little indentation. We've talked about all those. Usually within the year after they're born. I mean, it's mostly closed upon birth. Okay, if it's not, it needs to be surgically fixed. Some people, it can stay open for, as I said, years and years and years. Okay, so foramen ovale to fossa ovalis. We're not going to do the case study. Okay, so that is pregnancy in a nutshell, per se. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please just give me a phone call or an email, and I'll get right back to you. All right, thank you so much, and have a great week.